Welcome to the Joint Legislative Oversight and Sunset Committee Orientation Meeting. My name is Kyle Evans-Gay. I'm the senator representing District 5, and I'll be the chair of the Joint Legislative Oversight and Sunset Committee this year. With a new session beginning, I'd like to ask my fellow committee members to introduce themselves. And so when I call on you, if you could unmute yourself, please, and provide a quick introduction. I'd like to start with the co-chair of the committee, Vice Chair for this year, Representative Dorsey Walker.
Good afternoon, everyone. Representative Sherry Dorsey Walker of the 3rd District, and I'm happy to be co-chairing with Senator Kyle Evans-Gay.
Thank you, Representative. Senator Hansen.
Hello, Senator Stephanie Hansen. The 10th Senate District, which is Middletown, part of Bear Glasgow, and a little bit of Newark.
Thank you so much, Senator Hansen. Senator Pettyjohn.
Thank you, Senator Brian Pettyjohn, 19th District, representing Bridgeville, Georgetown, Long Neck. I'm also the Senate Minority Whip.
Welcome. And Senator Pinckney.
Good afternoon. My name is Marie Pinckney. I am the state senator for our 13th district, covering parts of Newark, Bear, and Newcastle.
Thank you. And I believe we are still waiting for Senator Richardson. We'll have his introduction when he's able to join us, just a short delay. Representative Griffith, are you able to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you so much, Senator Gay. I'm Krista Griffith, 12th Representative District, which covers neighborhoods in North Wilmington, Hocassin, and Greenville. Thank you so much. Excited to do the work of this committee.
Thank you, Representative Griffith. Representative Johnson.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Representative Kendra Johnson. I represent the 5th District. The 5th District is a little bit of a few things, a little bit of Bear, a little bit of Newark, and a little bit of Newcastle. I'm really excited to be a part of this committee. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Well, those little bits of folks are lucky to have you. So we'll move on to Representative Spiegelman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Spiegelman, 11th District, representing all or parts of Middletown, Odessa, Townsend, Hartley, Marydale, Kenton, Smyrna, Clayton, Dover, Camden, Wyoming. I'm missing one. Sorry to whoever is in the one I'm missing. My apologies. Thank you.
We won't tell them, Representative. Thank you so much for your introduction. And Representative Yerrick to wrap us up around.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and my fellow committee members. I'm Representative Lyndon Yerrick. I have the honor to serve the 34th Representative District. It encompasses Camden, Wyoming, Woodside, and half of Magnolia. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thanks to everyone. Very much looking forward to working together as a team. Of course, one of the 4 joint committees that we will comprise these 2 years. And I think we can do a lot of great work on behalf of the folks of Delaware. So, of course, the goal of this meeting, this orientation, is to ensure that we are all on the same page about how we're going to accomplish the work this session. And our staff is here to help facilitate and answer questions throughout the process. So I would like to ask them to introduce themselves at this time.
My name is Mark Brainerd. I am one of the 2 policy analysts for the committee. Started here in March of 2019. Before that, worked for the city of Newark and the House Majority Caucus over in the General Assembly.
Thanks, Mark.
And I am Amanda McAtee. I'm the other analyst. Mark and I started at the same time. And we have a slide with the rest of the staff on it that kind of helps us know in which order to go. So Mark, if you want to share the screen, we can enter that portion. Holly's next in the introduction, so I'll pass it to her.
Perfect, thank you.
While we're waiting on that.
Hi, I'm Holly Von Wagner. I am the Division of Research Deputy Director, and I am the attorney for the Sunset Committee. So I help with research questions and legal or otherwise, and then I help drafting legislation that comes out of the committee's work.
Hello, my name is Natalie White. I am the administrative support staff for the Joint Legislative Oversight and Sunset Committee. I also am a employee with the Division of Research as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Elliot Gray. I am the Legislative Fellow serving in both the Division of Research and the Joint Legislative Council or Joint Legislative Oversight and Sunset Committee, excuse me. And I am responsible for research assignments, and I want to make myself available to help facilitate the mission of the committee.
Thank you. And of course, everyone's contact information should be, you should have all of that. But of course, if you need to reach out to anyone, Mark and Amanda will put you in touch. I would like to move on and we'll go towards approving the committee rules. So at the beginning of each General Assembly, it's incumbent upon us to look at the committee rules and approve them. And so I'm going to ask Holly if she wouldn't mind taking us through some of the changes this year.
Sure, thank you. The only changes this year that we're proposing are related to the virtual meeting rules. So I believe it's on the next slide. The first slide are rules that most of you should already be familiar with. So then this next slide looks at changing the amount of time that a speaker may provide public comment if we're in a virtual session. So traditionally, someone who is representing a group or organization gets a little bit longer than a person who's representing themselves. And these changes reflect that. What I have been seeing in other committee meetings is that they give individuals 2 minutes to speak. So that's why I have drafted it this way. In overview, if it was a physical in-person meeting, an organization would get 5 minutes and an individual would get 3. So I propose that for the virtual meeting setting, to change that to 3 minutes for an organization and 2 for an individual. And I should say, overall, these are proposals we're making, so we can certainly make changes based on what you, the committee, wants. And then you can, at the end, decide whether to approve based on any changes you make even to these proposals. So the first here, as you see, is the time limit. The next slide, you'll see no changes here. It's the same rules that we've had for a couple years. We did have some rules updated, maybe 2017, 2019. So they're the same as they've been for at least 2 years. And then the last slide is really the biggest change. And all that really does actually is incorporate House Concurrent Resolution 1, which sets up the virtual meeting rules for the General Assembly and its committees. So what this rule says is the committee agrees to follow the rules that are in HCR 1, which they have to anyway, because it does govern all of our committees. And then I added a line, this is kind of a cut and paste from HCR 1 about allowing signatures. So in person, we would go around and collect your signatures physically, obviously. This rule mimics what's in the HCR 1, but applies it to the Sunset Committee and says that basically each member would give a committee analyst or me permission to affix their signature to the document virtually. And so that's just another part of the virtual meeting rules. So those are the only updates that we are recommending at this time.
Thank you, Holly. I appreciate that. And I just wanted to note before we have any discussion that Senator Richardson has joined. And Senator Richardson, if you wouldn't mind, just a quick introduction to the committee.
Hi, I'm State Senator Bryant Richardson. I represent the 21st District from Seaford to Delmore.
Thank you, Senator. Is there any discussion or questions regarding the proposed changes to the rules? I apologize, I'm just looking through to make sure there's no hands raised. It's hard to see on Zoom. All right, hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the rules as proposed.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I believe that was Senator Pettyjohn who moved. Is that correct?
Yep. Yes, it is.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. Having a motion by Senator Pettyjohn and a second by Representative Dorsey Walker. All those in favor, please signify by your silence. And if any member is opposed, please unmute yourself and speak accordingly. All right, the motion passes. Thank you very much, Holly. Thank you very much to the staff for.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll move on to approving the minutes. So if you would, please take a few minutes to review the draft minutes from, and here I'm supposed to say our March 11, 2020 meeting, but I'll note the committee's March 11, 2020 meeting at which I was not present, but they were emailed to you and they're available here on the screen if you'd like to review them. If everyone feels comfortable with the minutes, I will entertain a motion to approve them.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as they are.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Yerrick, and it was a second by, I believe, Representative Dorsey Walker again. Thank you. All those in favor of approving.
This is Senator Richardson. I will abstain since I wasn't at that meeting.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Senator Richardson.
As will I.
Then that was Senator Pettyjohn?
Yep.
Okay. Following suit, I'll abstain as well, considering I wasn't at that meeting. Thank you.
This is Representative Kendra Johnson. I was not at that meeting, so.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. At some point, you're going to have the number of people who weren't there is going to drop you from the required votes you're going to need to pass the minutes.
Yep, I just realized that doing the math as well as Representative. Thank you very much. So I'll go ahead and vote. I believe I have not received any comments from anyone who was there at the time, but if there are any comments from members of this committee who previously served on this committee in the prior General Assembly, perhaps that commentary would be helpful. And I see Amanda has her hand raised and she can comment on the accuracy of the minutes.
I was going to say, if Holly's still on the attorney for this committee, the minutes can be approved by any member that's currently sitting on the committee. You didn't have to be on the committee last session to approve the minutes. It's just approving that the minutes are sound in the record, that they're maintaining, that they captured the attendance, the time that was started, ended, and any vote that occurred. So if everyone recuses themselves, we will lose quorum for the vote. So, and that happens when you change over to general assemblies with committees. So everyone's permitted to vote that's sitting on the committee.
Thank you. I
Holly can
appreciate
correct me
that.
if
And of course, we'll respect anyone's desire to abstain if needed. And if Senator Richardson or Senator Pettyjohn wishes to comment, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, Madam Chair, with that, I will go ahead and record a vote.
Thank you, Senator.
Madam Chair, this is Senator Richardson. I will trust the former members of the committee and the staff that everything was accurate, and I will go ahead and vote in the affirmative.
Thank you very much, Senator. Representative Johnson.
The same is true for myself. Thank you.
Thank you. And I appreciate for which I'm sure will not be the first time, the staff being invaluable resources to all of us. So thank you very much. With that said, again, I did have a motion by Representative Yerrick and a second by Representative Dorsey Walker. If all those in favor could signify with your silence, and if any member opposes, please unmute yourself and speak accordingly at this time. All right. Hearing no opposition, the motion passes. Thank you very much, everyone. All right, we'll move on now to approving the final report. And of course, due to the pandemic that first occurred last year and is ongoing, the committee suspended its business following the March 11th, 2020 meeting. The staff put together this 2020 final report in draft form and published it on the committee's website on June 30th. For those sitting on the committee now, are there any questions or comments regarding this draft report? Just checking, I apologize, to see if there's any hands up. All right, seeing none, is there a motion to approve the final report?
I'll make a motion to approve the final report as is.
Second.
Thank you. I've got a motion by Representative Yerrick, a second by Representative Dorsey Walker.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by your silence. If any member is opposed, please unmute yourself and speak accordingly. All right, hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you very much. All right, so now we're going to move on to the rest of the agenda, which includes the presentation of committee processes and updates from staff, as well as a look at our potential meeting dates for 2021. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mark and Amanda to walk us through these items of the agenda.
Thank you, Senator Gay, and welcome everyone to orientation. Mark and I and the rest of the staff are really excited to work with you. To start off with a quick update, during this past crazy year, your staff has kept busy with some strategic planning initiatives that we launched in the summer. And as a result of this planning, we have identified areas for improvement and are working on finalizing a draft statute with modifications for your consideration at a future meeting. Our focus in all of this is to improve and update the review process and be more efficient and transparent in our work. So some of this information today is going to be a refresher for some, and some of it's going to be new for everybody as we highlight some areas of improvement. And we just want to provide a general overview of the committee to all the committee members in attendance today, and also the public that's with us through the live stream on YouTube. If any committee members have any questions at any time, if you'll use the raise hand feature, Mark and I will try our best to navigate these boxes to see your hand so we can answer your questions, because this orientation is for you guys. So we want to be available to answer anything that comes up. Additionally, we emailed out an orientation supplement to the committee members, and we encourage everyone to review that at your leisure. With our meetings now virtual, we've tried our best to put everything on the screen here so you don't have to flip screens, or if you printed it, makes it easier. And that orientation supplement will be posted online for the public after this meeting. Mark, if you'll advance, please. And this is where that information can be found. The committee's website is on the General Assembly's webpage. That's the direct link to it. The committee also has an email box at sunset@delaware.gov. We're encouraging everyone to direct all comments and inquiries to this centralized email box. Like always, all public comments received for the committee, the staff forwards those out to you. And then we also have a brand new mailing list. So anyone that's interested in that could just send a blank email with the subject line "Join Mailing List." And then finally, all of our meeting announcements are posted 7 days in advance, and that's on the public meeting calendar and also on the General Assembly website. So before I get into the process, I just wanted to briefly go over a bit of history because it provides some background on this committee's 2017 name change, and also some perspective on how other states function. So back in the 70s, sunset legislation was widely promoted to form laws or committees to reform government in order to curb waste and streamline operations. Colorado was the first state to take advantage of that in 1976, and then 36 states, including Delaware, followed. And of course, they all implemented this in a variety of different methods. Delaware established the Joint Sunset Committee in 1980, and the first report was issued in 81. So over time, most states, including Delaware, they learned that the most common product of the Sunset Review was actually improvement, not the termination of an agency or board, as the name suggests. So this led to a name change in January 2017. Delaware's Joint Sunset Committee became the Joint Legislative Oversight and Sunset Committee. So today, sunset review processes, they remain varied across the country, but they all tend to have program evaluation or auditing in common, and they're typically organized under a legislative, auditor, or research office. And one more thing before moving on to Columbo U, sunset is a term that you hear quite often. And it's worth pointing out that it can mean different things. There are sunset provisions and committees, and in Delaware, these two things are not typically related. So a sunset law or provision calls for the automatic termination of a government program, agency, or law on a specified date unless the legislature takes action to renew it. And then I put two examples on the right. You can see here that in one example, the sunset is being written into the law, and the other one, it's removing the sunset provision. And in both of these cases, the committee did not get involved. A sunset review was not completed, so that was independent of this joint committee. And then on the bottom half of the slide, we have the Sunset Committee and review process, which I'm going to get into momentarily, but it's worth pointing out, especially for anyone that's new, that each chamber in the General Assembly, they have a Sunset Committee, but they're independent from this joint committee. They can discuss bills that are not from the JLOSC process, and they will not come before the joint committee. However, as you know, legislation does come from this committee's work through the Sunset Review, Oversight Review, and sometimes provisions are written into the statutes based on that review. So for example, there's the Health Resources Board here on the left of the screen. This board was reviewed 3 times. It's now currently on its 4th review. There was a sunset provision, and it was eventually finally removed completely in 2009. That's the example. So it's currently under review, but it's not because of the sunset provision. It's because the prior committee selected it for review. So this slide I'm just going to put up here real quick just as an example. We've emailed out these next 2 documents, and this first one outlines the process overview. I feel advanced, thank you. And then this review timeline shows the entire Sunset and Oversight review process at a glance. So there's a lot of information on these documents, but we created them for you so that all the information could be in one place. And this is what we'll be going over in this presentation, is kind of more on this subject. Before moving on real quick, for returning members, you'll notice in the March-April section, this is a change. This year, we would like you to try to pick out the entities for review in 2022 in March. Traditionally, they've been selected in May and June, but we're hoping that the list can be picked in March because that would give us a 3-month head start on the review work. And for this committee, that's not uncommon. Looking back in the past, this committee has selected reviews as early as January, and historically, the committee was originally established with a review schedule with the intent to review every board and commission in the state. So before I move on, is there any questions? Is everyone okay with what I've went over so far? Okay, I don't see any. So I want to make sure I still had everyone on board. Okay, so the overview, the main function of this joint committee is, as most of you know, it performs periodic legislative review of agencies, commissions, or boards to determine if there's a genuine public need, and if there is, how is that entity effectively performing to meet it. So due to complexity, we ask that these reviews are typically selected from boards and commissions. And then another misconception, which I mentioned earlier in the history, is that this committee only seeks out to terminate entities. And that's not true. The purpose is not to terminate the entities that are sufficiently meeting a recognized state need and are accountable and responsive to public interest. Rather, the purpose is to use that review mechanism to strengthen and support them in their statutory obligations. And then the next slide shows how this review process works. It starts with the committee selecting the reviews for entities. The analysts then contact those entities, and we remain the point of contact throughout the entire process. The entities complete a self-report, which is another new concept I'll get to in a minute, and they provide all the required and requested information that's detailed in the statute. The analysts complete the fieldwork and research, and we conduct a performance evaluation on the entity. The research process, it includes engaging with the public and facilitating the collection and distribution of any public comment. And then finally, the draft report is written, and the committee receives that report, and the public meeting process begins. And on the next slide, there's 3 main types of public meetings that are held during the standard oversight and sunset review process. You have the presentation, recommendation, and holdover meeting. The presentation meeting is the first meeting that the entity will appear before the committee. The entity has the burden of showing that there is a genuine public need, and they must show that they're meeting that need. There is only, this is the only public meeting where public comment is permitted per the rules, and there are time limits, and those are outlined in Committee Rule 6. The committee will ask questions, and it rarely makes any decisions at this meeting. Those are reserved for the recommendations meeting. And Mark will go over some recommendation process details here in a moment, but this is where the analysts, where we present the recommendations to the committee, and then the committee discusses and votes on them. And then last on this slide is the holdover meeting, which comes last in the review process, but it's actually the first meetings that are held by the committee after the annual orientation in January. So holdover meetings are not needed for every single entity that's reviewed, and we actually hope to decrease the amount of them as we move forward and putting new processes in place. These meetings are typically held in February, traditionally in the evening, and entities present on their progress and implementing those recommendations. Then we have a fourth type of meeting that's in development that we're working on. The component review, it's actually called a rules review right now in this current statute. And it's the process as it's written right now, it's time restrictive. So it's not really feasible to put into practice. And to our knowledge, it's only been used once. We would like to revamp it and call it a component review so that this committee would have a well-functioning review mechanism for special projects. So the standard sunset and oversight review is a performance evaluation of the entire entity under review. A component review would focus on a specific rule, statute, program component, or issue. For example, the past reviews of adult protective services and the DENREX Division of Watershed Stewardship, they would have been great candidates for a component review if it had existed in the structure that we're working on. So this process would provide flexibility and that the committee chair could call a meeting at any time to discuss the component review project, and it wouldn't be stuck on the standard review cycle schedule. And once JLOSC initiates a component review, there's something called the OSM, which is the objective, scope, and methodology of a report. And that would be worked on and worked on between the staff and the committee to make that up, the focus of the review. And then the staff would then work to complete the research and field work, which would include public engagement, whether it be one-on-one interviews, surveys, or public input workshops. This is how a lot of states accomplish their work regarding similar projects, and the committee would meet to review the component review report and vote on the recommendations just like they would in any standard review process. And depending on the subject matter, this process could move a lot quicker. I'm sorry, Senator Richardson, did you have a question?
Yeah, I guess having my cursor over top of the raise hand thing activated, I hadn't pressed on it yet, but I do have a question. Sure. Sometimes bills are put in this committee. Why would a bill outside of the scope of the Sunset Committee be placed there?
Well, typically bills are not put in this committee that don't originate with it. Typically, the only legislation that this committee will review is legislation that your legislative attorney, Holly, is preparing for the recommendations that the committee has adopted. So typically that's not the structure. There's two independent sunset committees, one in the House, one in the Senate, and they do other work. They get bills assigned to them that are not from this committee.
Okay, what would the reason be for assigning a bill to a committee in the Senate or the House?
Mark, do you want to step in? I think that's usually up to how it gets assigned.
Yeah, that would be at the discretion of the Speaker of the House or the President Pro Tem of the Senate to assign a pre-filed bill to one of the chamber sunset committees, which is a process that occurs outside, obviously, of the scope of the work that Amanda, Holly, and I do.
Right. Okay. It seems like it interfere with our work on the committee and just be a diversion that would be unnecessary for us completing our assignments. Okay. All right. Thank you. That's good enough.
Senator Richardson, if it's helpful, I can speak with the pro tem and get a better answer for you on his view of the scope of the Senate Sunset Committee.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Madam Chairman. The pro tem that assigned two of my bills to the Sunset Committee is no longer a senator, so probably speaking to the new President Pro Tem, it wouldn't be necessary.
Okay, thank you.
But thank you.
Of
thank
course.
you for the offer.
Senator Hansen had a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to provide a little more additional information for Senator Richardson's question, if it's helpful at all. You know, I had a number of bills that were assigned in this committee that had to do with, for instance, the DDDS, the Division of Developmentally Disabled Services. And that was an entity that there was some discussion as to whether we were going to be doing a full sunset review. The committee here decided to propose a task force or support a task force. And so that task force has been in place for a period of time, and every time it gets extended or something happens with it that you need legislation, it's then assigned to this committee. So there's a connection to this committee, at least it was in that particular instance.
Thank you, Senator Hansen.
It's very helpful. Thank you.
Okay. So moving back along, if there's no other questions. So like I was saying, depending on the subject matter, we believe that the process could move a lot quicker with a component review for specialized projects. So then we have here on the screen the different types of reports. Now the roadmap document that looks like a roadmap, the review process, it defines 3 types of reports in the right lower hand corner. And those are here on the screen. The 3 main types of the reports involved in the standard sunset and oversight review process would be the self-report, draft report, and the final report. Worth noting, we also have meeting supplements that we prepare for meetings such as this, and also the holdover meeting that would be upcoming. And then the component review, which I just explained, we would like to put into the, we're trying to develop, and that would have an associated report, which would be similar to the draft report, but it would not include a performance evaluation because it's a strategic limited scope report. And then the self-report here, that is actually going to be completed by the entity under sunset and oversight review. This is a small change that we're implementing, whereas in the past, we used a performance questionnaire, which was all the questions, and those are lifted from the statute. So that's going to be sent out in a template, and the entity under review is going to fill in that information, writing their own self-report. It's the entity's responsibility to prove there's a genuine public need, so it's up to them on how they're going to present themselves in this self-report. Once we send it to the entity, they'll have 90 days to complete it. When we receive it back, we would be posting it onto the committee's website and we'd also send it to the committee, but it would be out there for the public. And that becomes part of our review process and our research. And just like the old performance questionnaire process, once we get that information, we dig into the information provided. And that self-report is actually an item that we've identified as being helpful to us. We've noticed other states, larger states, such as Texas, have been successfully using this method for their sunset reviews. So I just mentioned the changes with that performance questionnaire. No surprise, the draft report's going to look a little different. We have some updates for that. The old draft report mostly contained information that was supplied by the entity in that performance questionnaire. And it only had a small section for an analyst comment. So we're moving forward with, in the committee statute, there's a term in there called performance evaluation. And performance evaluation is actually a recognized term by the U.S. Government Accountability Office, which is GAO for short. In our research, we found guidance from GAO. They have something called a yellow book, and that's the industry standard for performance audits and evaluations. Our peers use this, and also other agencies within the state, such as the auditor's office, use the yellow book. One remarkable difference you'll see in future draft reports is you will see a defined OSM, which is the objective, scope, and methodology. We've used this in past reports, but we'd like to be more transparent and upfront with how that's developed and what's in that. The other benefit from structuring reports clearly with a clearly defined OSM is that it actually keeps the report on task. So for purposes of standard and sunset and oversight reviews, the OSM is actually already defined in the statute, and it shows what the performance evaluation must cover. Moving forward, anything that we find as analysts that are outside of that report scope, we'll be setting those items aside and bringing that to the committee's attention for a possible component review discussion. And then last but not least, we have the final report, which of course is completed by staff. It's brought to the committee for approval, And then it's delivered to the General Assembly and Governor at the end of the session on June 30th, and we post it on the website. This, of course, covers a review of all the committee's work and adopted recommendations from that year. And now I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to Mark, and he's going to take you through the recommendation process and all our other fun stuff we have here. Thank you. Oh, did we have any questions before I leave? I think we're good. Okay, take it away, Mark.
Representative Urick, did you have a question?
More of a statement. I should have shared my comments earlier to the new members. I think you'll be thoroughly impressed with the quality of the staff that we have. They're top notch, their commitment, their professionalism between Amanda, Holly, and Mark, that it's a pleasure to serve on this committee based upon how easy they make it by how hard they work. So that was a reminder going through what Amanda was just sharing, that I should have said that earlier on. So I've now said it for the record. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Likewise.
Nope.
Thank you.
No pressure now.
Mr. Brainerd, I must concur. I happen to agree with Representative Urick on that. The work that you and your team do is amazing. We appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Thank you. And it's a pleasure working with all you as well. So thank you very much.
It absolutely is. Thank you. As Amanda mentioned, there are some updates to the process that we are rolling out based on kind of what we went through last year. In the past, we submitted all the recommendations for entities to the committee after the presentation meeting. As Amanda mentioned with the draft report, moving forward, some initial recommendations will be part of the draft report, allowing a quicker turnaround for the recommendation meetings. The entity under review will also have more time to review those and make comments prior to the committee's consideration of those initial recommendations. These recommendations will come after thorough research and analysis that Amanda and I, with Holly's help, have done. Obviously, it's just the first step in the recommendation process, and any recommendations that do come out organically from that presentation meeting will be incorporated into the list provided at the recommendation meeting. So it goes without saying that as the committee, you all are free to modify, reject, create brand new recommendations. We are just providing the conclusions of our research. It's part of the process and is very common through similar sunset and oversight committees. If I can multitask. The committee is statutorily authorized to recommend one or more of the following recommendations: continuation of the entity as it is, termination of the entity as a whole, termination of any program within it, consolidation, merger, transfer, any of the functions or any part of the entity to another one, termination of the entity unless certain conditions are met or modifications are made. This is typically by legislation, budget appropriation limits for the entity or division, department it falls under, legislation which the committee considers necessary to carry out. So while most votes taken by this committee only require a simple majority 6, an affirmative vote of 7 members is required to adopt a recommendation, terminate an entity, or rescind a vote to terminate an entity. So those are the three, kind of the big three for a yes vote of 7. The legislation piece kind of comes after the recommendation process. The JLOSC attorney works with the entity and Amanda and I to draft a bill for the committee's consideration after recommendations are adopted that require legislation. The attorney ensures, this is Holly, ensures that the draft bill is legally sound, meets the committee's recommendation, and conforms to the legislative drafting manual standards. The process always takes more time than expected or desired. Holly wanted me to repeat that. So for, for a second time, the process always takes more time than expected or desired. The analysts and attorney work closely with the entity during the drafting process to ensure that we are meeting all of their regulations. And the completed drafts are presented to the committee for final review and approval. That happens before any bill is filed. So it comes before this body for final approval, and then it gets introduced. I am not an expert in FOIA. That is Mark Catrona, but just for purpose of this committee, I wanted to go over a little bit of FOIA's purpose and how it might affect this committee. FOIA ensures that the public business is performed in an open and public manner, giving citizens easy access to public records. It also ensures that citizens have the opportunity to observe the performance of public officials and monitor official decisions that go about in formulating and executing public policy. Understanding FOIA's purpose is helpful to understanding FOIA itself. Its twofold purpose regarding open records and open meetings. In both of these instances, we will explore kind of a brief overview of what that means and how it might affect the Joint Legislative Oversight and Sunset Committee. So if you have a question arising out of the work on JLOSC, the staff is the best place to start. As your staff, we pride ourselves on serving you the best we can and can serve you even better as soon as you have any issues like this facing the committee. We do work hard to anticipate any issues that you guys may face, including FOIA. So we dig into these issues before, hopefully, they even become issues to plan the necessary response for you and your colleagues. If we aren't aware of any sort of request or issue, please make us aware as soon as possible. Chances are we have the staff and we already know kind of what's going on, and we can start formulating a response as soon as possible. If you have a question arising out of your general work as a legislator, but especially if you receive a FOIA request, you should contact Mark Catrona. He is the FOIA coordinator for the General Assembly. He's the point of contact for these sorts of requests. If he hasn't received it through the electronic mailbox, he would need to know about it. He's required to keep a document tracking all FOIA requests that come to the General Assembly and how these requests are handled. He's also required to coordinate the response from the General Assembly. It's helpful to have a coordinated response when these requests come in because they tend to branch out and they tend to touch a lot of legislators and entities and their staff. Based on the exceptions, the following records of the General Assembly and this committee are not often provided in a FOIA request. Records specifically exempted from public disclosure by statute or common law. Emails received or sent by members of the General Assembly or their staff. Communications between a member and a constituent. Communications by a member of the General Assembly on behalf of a constituent. And it kind of goes without saying, communications between members of the General Assembly. FOIA covers all meetings unless the meeting is not a meeting or the body has one of the 9 statutory reasons to enter executive session. Public comment, meetings must be open so citizens can observe their government in action. It does not give the public a right to participate in the meeting. It's up to the body to decide if it wants to permit public comment. If permitted, it's up to the body to determine what comment occurs and how much time may be given for that comment. If permitted, may not discriminate in the amount of time provided. As a side note, JLOSC rules state time permitted for public comment. That was Rule 6 that we went over a little bit earlier. For notice and agenda, FOIA generally requires notice and an agenda for each meeting, but also provides that these requirements don't apply to the General Assembly. JLOSC is bound by the notice and agenda requirements contained in its rule. The notice and agenda requirement is largely consistent with FOIA rule number 11 of the committee. The committee shall post on the General Assembly's website at least 7 calendar days prior to a committee meeting with the date, time, place, agenda, etc. For minutes, FOIA makes it clear that minutes are public records. Public bodies keep minutes of their meetings. Minutes must include record of members present, each vote taken, and each action agreed on. Those are kind of the bare minimum parameters there. FOIA also makes it clear that these minutes are a public record. So I know I kind of flew through that, but I want to check to see if there are any questions. And like I said, I'm not an expert in FOIA, so if we can't answer them, we will gladly get an answer for you as soon as possible.
Senator Richardson has a question.
Great.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do you have any idea when we're going to be through with the virtual sessions and meet publicly, or will any of our meetings be held publicly in the foreseeable future?
I'm happy to address that, Mark, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Senator.
Of course, and Senator Richardson, it's a good question. I think that it's incumbent upon Representative Dorsey Walker and myself to confer with the leadership of the House and Senate as to when they feel comfortable having folks back in the building. And so we'll make a commitment to do that and to give an update to this committee prior to coming back into session after the JFC break.
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I make a suggestion?
Absolutely.
Okay, Deltec has plenty of space where we could social distance and have meetings, especially those open to the public. So it's something I'd like you to take into consideration.
Senator Richardson, thank you so much for your comment. Some of us are also caregivers, and so at the other side of this is, and being a caregiver, it's very difficult to be in the presence of others until people have been vaccinated and we can make sure that everyone can be safe in the midst of what we're currently enduring. So while I truly would love to be in the presence of others, we do need to be mindful of the restrictions for those who have other responsibilities too, sir.
I understand. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that. And so I wanted to quickly highlight that concludes the info on the process and legislation and FOIA. We now wanted to move on to updates from the last General Assembly and then moving forward to where we hope to be by June 30th, 2021. Just to provide an idea of the work that Sunset does, we wanted to provide some highlights from the 150th General Assembly. Prior to 2019, when Amanda and I came on, JLOSC only had 1 analyst. So now that it has been expanded to 2 full-time analysts, we were able to kind of incorporate some updates and some streamlining of the processes as we just kind of went over. So since coming on board, we created a new logo thanks to our friends in the print shop, enhanced report layouts, and we started to develop and include fact sheets, visual infographics, and just kind of the streamlining of information. I know as legislators, you all are bombarded with tons of information and paper on a daily basis. So the more info we can give you in less paperwork is kind of what we're striving for. Sunset held its first meeting during the 150th General Assembly on March 19th, 2019. That was because Amanda and I were brand new in March of that year. Due to new staff and unfortunately COVID-19, JLOSC faced shortened meeting schedules in both sessions of the 150th General Assembly. But despite that condensed timetable, as you can see here, we did end up completing a lot of work in this 2-year period. And we hope only to complete more as we get through this year. The review process will continue for 2020 holdover agencies, and we are continuing to draft the legislation needed for 2019. And if you look at the bottom of the screen, you'll notice that in June of this year, the JLOSC will celebrate its 40th anniversary. As you may already know, due to the pandemic, all 2020 reviews were paused in mid-March of 2020. Prior to that, 2 of our 2020 entities held the public presentation meeting process of their review. That was DENREC's Conservation District Operations and the Delaware Health Resources Board. The other 2, DIAA, the Delaware Interscholastic Athletic Association, and DNHRQAC, the Delaware Nursing Home Resident Quality Assurance Commission, had not held their public presentation meetings. Legislation was also placed on hold, so the number of bills that you see on the to-do list will be growing as our review process continues. 2019 holdovers. Oh, sorry, Representative Urick, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mark. Question. Just want to make sure I understand the 2 entities that we didn't have any engagement with. Is what you're saying? Do we have the ability to remove them from the list, from the holdover list, the DIAA and the Nursing Home Resident Quality Assurance Commission? If we feel like we don't need to review them, can they be replaced?
I'm sorry, Mr. Brainerd.
Yes,
I'd like to respond to Representative Urick. I believe both of those entities do need to be reviewed by sunset due to some issues that were brought to our attention from the community.
Yeah, I was just, when I read the statement about with the legislation for holdovers, we could, I'm not saying we will, but I was just trying to get that clarified. So thank you for that.
And hopefully with those, I'm the point person, the point analyst on those 2 entities, and I have to say 90% of the work is done when it comes to research and kind of the writing and the grunt work of that. So our goal as we move into scheduling what 2021 will look like, that those 2 entities should move fairly quickly through the process, given the amount of time that we've had to kind of finalize the scope of what that will be.
Mark, I was going to add, just for clarification purposes, what that means by if to release the entity under review is once you get through the presentation meeting, which is the first thing that will need to be scheduled for DIAA and the Nursing Home Resident Quality Assurance, then it will go on to the recommendations meeting. And for all 4 of these, when you get to the recommendations meeting, the committee can vote to release them from review pending legislation, or you can vote to release them pending follow-up reporting. In other words, you don't have to hold on to them and keep holding them over. You have that ability, and Mark and I will help with that when we get to the recommendations. We have those supplements prepared for you, so that kind of gives you an idea of what you can, your options available, I should say. Say, Mark, you're on mute.
Thank you. Thanks, Amanda, for that clarification. So, yeah, kind of to reiterate Amanda's point, the goal is to kind of start 2022 turning a new page and kind of completing all of this work that kind of has been backlogged since we started. So to kind of reiterate that point, holdovers from 2019 are mostly complete. DACD, APS, DIN, and the Council on Corrections have some technical legislation that we're working on. Those entities are released pending those bills. For DVI, they submitted a 2020 progress report as requested. So those updates will be part of the 2021 holdover meeting that we hope to have in a couple weeks. Committee members, all of you, will be able to review that progress report and the status of all those recommendations that were implemented last year and the year before. So quick, Senator Richardson. Yes.
Thank you. Looks like there's 22 bills that are needed for 2021. Am I reading that right? 28 bills.
Yes, that is a complete picture of 2019 and then the pause that happened in March of 2020. So that's kind of the estimate from 2019.
Okay, are all those bills ready to be reviewed now or not?
There's some that are ready,
yeah.
Some are on process. Everything got put on hold in March, and a lot of the entities that are in holdover status had their own world kind of imploding when COVID hit. So a lot of that got put on hold. And that's an estimate. And like Mark explained, all the holdovers are technically released pending either a legislative element, or most of them are technical corrections. And once that's released, they actually are released from review. And then there were items that were listed in the recommendations. It was almost kind of like a wish list that each entity under review would like to see passed to help streamline their process, which is part of the sunset process. Is you go through, you look at things for improvement, and then you try to get that legislation drafted to help them out. So that's where we're at. Okay. So it's an estimate. It might not be 28, but there is a lot of legislation pending to get done.
Okay, would any of those be considered major bills as far as making major changes?
Some of them with DVI would be major changes, but then again, when we get over into that holdover meeting, we'll talk some more about how to kind of triage or streamline that process. Some of them might not. We might get creative with how those get drafted. They might not. They might work between the entity and the stakeholders that need to participate in that drafting, rather than us doing it.
Okay, thank you.
And Council on Correction will also be kind of pretty substantial when it comes to an organizational point. The main issue with that entity was administrative and staffing, so their statute would look fairly different as a result of this review process.
Thank you.
Sure. So we went over a little bit. I want to highlight just a couple things on this slide. February goals would be the DVI holdover, as well as the 2 presentation meetings for DIAA and the Nursing Home Resident Quality Assurance Commission. March, again, highlighting the entity selection for 2022. And then later spring, we would get into the discussion of any component reviews and finalizing what 2022 will look like. To piggyback off of Senator Richardson's point, legislation will be a continuous process throughout the year. It is our hope to have bills in front of you as often as possible, so we can work through that process. So in setting the 2021 schedule, I am going to switch gears a little bit. And if you all could,
Mark, while you're getting that set up, I just
Sure.
wanted real quick, if Amanda or Mark, if you could comment quickly on, I think this was part of the presentation, but some of how you view the scope of the work that now needs to be done, kind of carrying over from 2019. I know that we are going to, have involvement from, the stakeholders in the process, but I also know that a lot of that analysis has been completed, and that, our role now as this new committee is going to be more narrow. Is that correct?
That's correct. All the research has been done at this point. There might be a couple small, very small odds and ends that Mark mentioned with some 2020 reviews, but certainly the 2019 reviews, that research is completely closed out and finished. For two of those 2019 reviews, we had DVI and DEN. They both had additional task force meetings that were held in the fall of 2019. So they went through a pretty intensive process with gaining public comment and stakeholder interaction. What I meant earlier by the legislation, the drafting process, is that it is possible to release like DVI from review and just allow the legislation to happen in the background, much as what is happening with DEN. DEN had a lot of legislation that they would like considered. And like I said, it's kind of like a wish list, and a lot of that is drafted already that came out of the task force process, but they're able to be released from review once that piece, that bill passes. That's a technical correction bill. And then any remaining pieces of legislation can continue through the process without holding on to that review.
okay. To the last part of our orientation that we wanted to share with you is setting the 2021 schedule. So we have, hopefully you can see, yes, on your screen, the number of meetings we want to schedule for February include the DVI holdover, the presentations for the two 2020 entities, and then we want to jump right into two recommendation meetings. Based on what occurred last year, I made this assumption based on last year's committee with combining the two presentations into one meeting. If you all would rather than be two separate 1 hour meetings, we can do that as well. But for DIAA and the Quality Assurance Commission, we had initially scheduled those presentations for 1 2 hour meeting.
That's reasonable.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Perfect. So based on our statute, we are asked to give entities 2 weeks notice prior to scheduling a meeting with them. So that puts the DVI holdover meeting at the earliest the week of February 8th. So what I would like to do, I'm sorry, as soon as I can get my window back. If anybody would like to open it up for any suggestions. I know Representative Urick said Tuesdays and Thursdays work best for him. So looking at February 9th or 11th for a possible DVI holdover meeting, if that pleases.
Mr. Brainerd, are we looking to do this in the evening, or since we're virtual, could we potentially look at the possibility of going a little earlier in the day, contingent upon the schedules of everyone of the new members?
Yeah,
of the committee.
we could absolutely do an earlier meeting. This is when the JFC and capital improvement joint committees are meeting. So yeah, it's kind of a free for all in February. It's all up to you.
Can I suggest that we look in the afternoon, potentially 2 p.m. and if members have conflicts in the afternoon, they could share those. On the
If we
9th.
could do the, I'm sorry, if we could do the 9th at 3, does that work for you, Senator, as well as the rest of the committee members?
I have no conflicts with that.
Works for me.
Okay.
Good. Thank you.
I would prefer
Great.
3.
3 o'clock, you said, Senator Richardson?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Perfect.
Great.
Great. So the 2-hour presentation meeting for both of these entities, they are ready to go. Like I said, we've had a year for research and conclusions. So if you wanted to do the 11th, or if you wanted to move to the 16th, 17th, or 18th.
The 10th, is that not feasible to do maybe back-to-back meetings? Is that not feasible for the rest of the committee?
I prefer not, but if we have to, I mean, is there a thought that we can just go Tuesday, the 16th, 23rd, and 2nd at 3 o'clock? I mean, if that works for everybody's schedule on Tuesday, the 9th, will it work for everybody's schedule the rest of the time? We can just say that that's it. We have 4 meetings we have to do, and there's 4 days in front of us at a meeting time. Does that work for everybody?
Maybe I'll check one second.
No, I'm not available the 3rd or the 24th.
The
Well, it would be this. It would be the 23rd and 2nd, but that's good.
23rd and 2nd, no.
Mark, can I ask if you are, I know you've marked out through the 4th, but would it be beneficial? Are there other things to accomplish or that we might accomplish in that time during the JFC break, or would you prefer to spread these out across the 4 weeks? Sorry, my question was complex and not clear.
No, that's fine.
For us to spread it out.
Moving into March is when session starts back up again. And given that the virtual nature of all of this makes chamber committee meetings in the House and Senate kind of difficult to navigate around, we were hoping to try to get as many February meetings and first week of March as possible, given what session has started to look like this year.
Can I ask the members, if just not looking at what we would put in that time, but can I ask whether Tuesday the 16th of February at 3 p.m. would also be feasible, that we could block that? I know the 23rd and the 2nd don't work.
16th, I can do.
This is Krista Griffith. I can do the 16th.
I'm actually looking right now. I can make the 23rd work. We actually fly out that night. So.
Well, our disappointment at not being able to join the vacation aside.
Yeah, but you got to spend 2 weeks with him then.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Never mind. You get to go, Representative. I think if we could hold that time, then that would be terrific. And could we entertain the 11th and the 18th as potential if there's availability on those afternoons? I know it's a crunch, but we may be able to be.
I know the 11th is a definite no for me, but we could look at. I know that Representative Spiegelman wasn't really interested in back-to-back meetings, but is that a possibility?
If I have to, I will.
Okay.
Are you available on
Thank you for being a good sports, Representative Spiegelman.
I'm always a good sport.
You always are. So we could
agree.
potentially.
Does
So,
anyone
Senator,
else?
are we looking at February 10th then?
I'm sorry, the 18th, I think was, I'm looking at what Mark is looking at on the screen.
Yes,
Representative
please.
Walker, are you available on the 18th?
please correct me if I am not following the conversation exactly. So I basically just wrote out what I heard. So if I am incorrect in any of these, please let me know.
I think you're right, Mark. I think Representative Yerrick was hoping to avoid Wednesdays. So
Right.
the 18th would be the other date that would be available since the 11th is not. Representative Dorsey Walker, I don't know if Thursdays in general are tough for you.
You know, I was thinking, since we discussed the back-to-back meeting, if we did February 10th, excuse me, February 9th, February 10th, February 16th, then that gives us 3 of the 4 meetings that we must do. And then if we looked at the 18th, I think that we'll be done for the month of February, if
So,
that's conducive to everyone's schedule. Representative Johnson?
excuse me, this is Representative Johnson chiming in. I've been trying to put all this on my calendar while you guys were talking. But what I will share is that the 18th for me is already pretty heavy. So I wouldn't be willing to add another heavy meeting in on that day.
If I may, just very quickly, Mark, I think a couple of years ago, you sent out one of those calendar things that allows people to plug in what days and times. Why don't we go ahead and instead of trying to one at a time it here with everybody, why don't you just, it may be better if you just send out that email. That way everybody can respond to it, you know, with what days and times they have available. It makes things considerably easier.
I do
Well,
appreciate.
if I could just add one thing, Representative Spiegelman, I thought you were the millennial that knew what those thingies were called.
Yeah, how about that?
Yes, Representative Griffith, they're called thingies.
It's a doodle poll.
Representative Spiegelman, I appreciate that, but we are actually just so very close to actually solving this puzzle.
Exactly.
And so I think what I see, I think Representative Dorsey Walker was trying to juggle her screens. And so Representative Dorsey Walker, I didn't know if you saw what Mark had presented up here. Right now it's the 9th, 16th, and 23rd at 3 p.m. Is that okay moving forward? I think we're avoiding the 18th because of Representative Johnson's commitment and avoiding the 11th because of your other commitment on the 11th.
9th, 16th.
And 23rd at 3 p.m. Senator Pettyjohn is making it work for us on the 23rd.
Yeah.
Are we looking to still do February 10th as well, doing the back-to-back meetings, February 9th, 10th?
I think that would be a question for Representative Yerrick, and I know that Wednesdays were going to be difficult for him to make.
Yeah, if I'm
Representative Yerrick?
I can make it work. So I don't want to be the deal breaker. I like the Tuesdays, like how they're lined up, but if we have to do a Wednesday, I'll work around that and do my best to be in attendance.
Let's see how the rest of the committee members feel about the 10th. If there's any conflicts, Representative Johnson, I know you were trying to get a word in, and I'm sorry if there's a conflict for you on the 10th, please let us know.
No, I can make the 10th work.
I would appreciate that, Representative Yerrick, and I know we're working around some different scheduling pieces. So
this is
10th is good for me.
What about combining? We had talked about combining the one meeting. I see meeting 2. Those 2 things are combined for a 2-hour. But does that could we combine another 2 of these into one more 2-hour meeting so that instead of scheduling for 4 meetings in February, we are scheduling for 3?
And that's an outstanding idea, Senator, because if we did the 9th to 10th and the 16th, that is feasible, because I just looked, the 23rd will not work at 3.
I know recommendation meetings can kind of go on long. I just want to make sure that we're allotting enough time.
all right, well, let's then, if it is going to be, if we are going to do those separately, Senator Pettyjohn, can you give us an idea of after the 17th? I think your schedule might be the most restrictive.
18th, I'm good. Hold on, let me pull it up here again. 18th, I'm good. 23rd, I'm good. After that, you might get me on vacation. Yeah.
So Senator Gay, Madam Chair, I'm wondering if Senator Hansen's idea of combining the meetings could actually be feasible if we did February 9th, February 10th, and the combination meeting on February 16th.
And I just want to confirm with the staff your thoughts about what kind of time we might have to allot for that type of meeting, combined meeting.
I mean, honestly, if it was on the Tuesdays at 3 p.m., I mean, that would give lead time for these meetings. And we thank you for entertaining this, because really the objective was to get dates in February nailed down, because we have to notice and then of course notify all the entities that they're going to appear. But that's just my 2 cents, like, just because there's a lot of information and a lot of prep that goes into each meeting. So it makes sense just to have a standing Tuesday 3 p.m. meeting if that worked for everyone.
But for specifically, Amanda, for meeting 3 and meeting 4, the 2 recommendation meetings, do you feel comfortable that we would be able to schedule those on February 16th at 3 p.m. And allow enough time for everyone to be heard?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry, Mark, go ahead.
That would be another 2-hour block, similar to the presentation meeting on the 10th. Would run from 3 to 5, and then the recommendation meeting on the 16th would also run from 3 to 5.
I'll do the if there are any objections to that, please let me know. Indicate agreement with your silence, please. All right. Well, thanks to Senator Hansen. I think that we've squared that, and I appreciate everyone walking through that process with us.
And to Representative Spiegelman's point, for the rest of them, I will set up one of the thingies and send it out.
I want it right into the minutes as a thingy.
As a thingy. Copyright.
Mark, are you moving DIAA to the 16th and moving the recommendation to the 23rd? Are we doing Tuesday from 3 to 5 for all 3 meetings?
No.
I heard Senator Gay finalize this as the 9th, 10th, and the 16th.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
Representative Dorsey Walker had a conflict on the 23rd, and of course we've got to ship Senator Penny John off to Florida. So we've got to get it in before everyone is set.
Apologies, I misheard. Thank you. That works.
No problem.
That works.
Thank you, everyone, for working with our schedules. We greatly appreciate it.
And like Amanda said, February is kind of critical when it comes to notice. So thank you very, very much for working that out for us. So I'm going to switch back.
And looking at the time, we're ahead of schedule, so we're doing good. So thank you. Thank you for helping us out with that.
Yes, and we are almost done, I promise. Of course, that's going to do that to me. Yay. Perfect. So that concludes our part of the presentation. On your screen, you will see the Division of Research's Twitter handle, our website for this committee, the phone number, and the brand new email box for any notifications that you can send constituents to and join our mailing list. So that's it for us. So thank you all very much for being here. We look forward to a great 2021.
Thank you, Mark. And for anyone watching as well, I would encourage use of the sunset@delaware.gov email address. Although Representative Dorsey Walker and I are always as responsive as we can be to our emails, we want to make sure that any issues related to the Sunset Committee are being addressed timely and by the right people. So please use that, and we will make sure and stay up to date with any requests and information coming through. I wanted to echo before we wrap up Representative Yerrickson, Representative Dorsey Walker's comments. I, of course, have the benefit of going through a new legislator orientation recently, and the benefit of that for me was that I got to see this presentation twice and really can internalize the real work that's been done, even despite a pandemic, to be creative and innovative with this committee. And I think that looking at the room, the Zoom room around me, I know the folks here will be committed to helping fulfill that mission. And so I greatly appreciate the work of the staff to get us in a place where we can be most effective on behalf of our constituents and on behalf of the House and Senate. So thank you for that. And I look forward to working with everyone. With that, if there is nothing, no other business, then I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you everyone for coming today.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good week.